It's your boy D Neal back with another reaction video, guys. Here we are with 90s NBA. A lot better than you think. So I need to hear about this 90s NBA shit. Go ahead, talk to me. Before we dive in, guys, subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell, get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. I got social media, Patreon, all up top. You can subscribe to any of it. Put all the links in the description. All you gotta do is hit the link, follow me, talk to me. Love talking to you guys. You guys are the most incredible team on YouTube. Woo, we got it. Oh my. That was nasty. Who's that? God.
As the NBA morphed from the golden era of the 80s to the new decade of the 90s, a shift of power became apparent as the old guard of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson gave way to a new crop of stars led by none other than the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan.
Second greatest.
And yet, with every season that goes by, the 90s slander gets louder and more egregious.
Alonzo? I didn't even know Alonzo could shoot jumpers, bro. Dwayne Wade, my favorite basketball player all time. I know he was older when D Wade was on the team, but I didn't even know he could shoot jumpers back in his day.
Egregious.
I want something else. Not listening when you say.
How did that decade go from eclipsing the popularity that the 80s began to being considered a trash decade to be forgotten by so many? A lot of people would point to the pace of the game, and indeed, it did go from a high of 97.8 to a crawl of 88.9 before creeping up in the last year of the decade to a 93.1. But what people might get confused about is that the aughts had even slower pace across the board, peaking at a slow 92.7, making the 90s look more like a track meet than a Sunday stroll through the park.
That's crazy.
Of course, the lack of three-point attempts is also an issue, artificially limiting scoring and spacing due to a lack.
Yeah, that's about tripled nowadays. That the 90s. I'm laughing because this looked like a Steph Curry stat line after a season at this point. Higher shooting percentages though, but for the whole NBA. Look like a Steph Curry stat line for a season. That's crazy.
So an issue, artificially limiting scoring and spacing due to a lack of creativity by the coaches throughout the league. However, in the middle of the decade, we suddenly saw a 55% increase as the NBA experimented with a shorter three-point line. While we caught a glimpse into a more modern attack, it also served to slow down the ball movement even more and condense the spacing due to less space inside the...
Hey, y'all, let me see that one more time. I'm sorry. God dang.
We caught a glimpse into a more modern attack. It also served to slow down the ball movement even more and condense the spacing due to less space inside the arc. As a result, the scoring went down during this period, and they restored the line for the 97-98 season.
God, Reggie, my lord.
The style also evolved out of the 80s, where teams wanted to cut down on turnovers and ensure their stars got enough shots. As a result, we got less ball movement and a whole lot of isolations out top. But that didn't lessen the excitement as we appreciated tremendous footwork in the post by some of the game's all-time best post players and the
game. Oh my lord, the game. This man is
footwork in the post by some of the game's all-time best post players and the ballet of individual skill in the face of
What's up,
incredibly
baby?
physical defense.
Oh, easy.
While
one.
zone principles weren't allowed like they are now, the mano-a-mano battles created real drama and intrigue. And the fact that defenders could use their bodies more to balance out the offensive brilliance lent a real manliness to the games. You better not come into the lane unless you were bringing it.
God dang. Oh my lord.
Get out with LPP. Yeah, you know me. Get out with LPP.
That was crazy.
Who's down with LPP?
That was crazy.
Another way to look at the
That was
90s
one
is
of
to
the
acknowledge
nastiest
how
dunks
many
I've
Hall of Famers played during the decade. No fewer than 40 players that are now in the Hall laced them up and played on the court during this period. And in comparison, the 80s only had 35. And when you look at that list, we're talking some of the all-time greatest players at their position, going to battle nightly, putting on a show, but also going through the gauntlet of arguably the most physical era of the NBA. We're not just talking about Michael Jordan's brilliance as he mastered the triangle, or Charles Barkley's MVP campaign to get the Suns to the finals, or Hakeem Olajuwon winning 2 titles while cold embarrassing other Hall of Famers.
Oh my God.
Or David
bro.
Robinson's incredible skills and quickness for a big man. We still had some of the old guard who every once in a while could put on a show, like Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish in Boston. Magic Johnson carried his Lakers teams to an improbable finals in 1991. Dominique Wilkins had several monster years in the 90s. And even Bernard King put on one last incredible show to start the decade in Washington, reminding us how he could fill it up as well as anybody who ever played. Then you had...
I'm just sitting here. I need to see some Hakeem Olajuwon highlights, bro. That footwork is crazy. It's crazy, bro.
He could fill it up as well as anybody who ever played. Then you had Shaquille O'Neal burst on the scene, as agile as any big man in his size when he first started. And Jason Kidd began his on-court dominance without even having to score. On top of that, we get the seeds of stellar careers from players like Kobe Bryant with the afro. Ray Allen is not only a shooter but a lethal driver to the hoop. And Steve Nash is heady and highly skilled play. And those seeds slowly blossomed toward the end of the decade before their dominant streaks later on in the aughts. And let's face it, except for Dirk and Vince, every other player from this era is retired and losing their youthful appearance. A lot of them have shaved their heads to avoid revealing their bald spots, but you don't have to. Even if that hairline is just starting to shoot its own fadeaway, there's a solution, and it's called Hims. Their real doctors have come up with medical-grade solutions to treat hair loss, skin care, and sexual wellness. Their products are FDA in the 90s. For some reason, the 90s also saw an explosion of basketball movies. Some rank at the very top of the list for best movies about the sport of all time, and many certainly rank at the very bottom as well. Arguably, the best basketball movie is White Men Can't Jump.
Such a phenomenal basketball movie. Phenomenal basketball movie.
Arguably, the best basketball movie is White Men Can't Jump, released in 1992 and featuring some cringe-worthy basketball skills, but capturing the playground spirit perfectly.
Shut your anorexic, malnutrition, tapeworm having, overdose, Dick Gregory, Bahamian diet drinking ass up. Leave me alone.
And Hoop Dreams was released in 1994, a documentary following 2 high school players in Chicago over the course of years. It was nominated for an Academy Award and unquestionably should have won it. But we did have to endure airballs like Basketball, Air Bud, and Slam Dunk Ernest.
I liked Air Bud. I was a kid. I liked Air Bud. Slam Ernest seemed like it was.
Air Bud and Slam Dunk Ernest.
That looks terrible.
A big part of the 90s that has not endured till today's era is the sense of rivalries between teams.
Oh my
and the
God!
playoffs during
Bro, he just flipped this man.
till today's era is the sense of rivalries between teams. and the playoffs during this time featured some of the all-time epic matchups we've ever seen. The Knicks and Pacers gave real meaning to the word battle, as both teams preached a hard-nosed style designed to knock the rhythm and the snot out of the other team. Plenty of fights erupted, making these series unusually intense from the tip. The Knicks also tangled with the Heat, and the added fuel to the fire was how Heat coach Pat Riley unceremoniously left the Knicks, creating an emotional tsunami that got the better of the players when they tangled, culminating in this memorable scene of
all these punches thrown and they ain't land one though. All these punches thrown and these two big fellas ain't land one.
got the better of the players when they tangled, culminating in this memorable scene of Knicks coach Jeff Van Gundy attached to Alonzo Mourning's leg in a desperate attempt to stop a brawl. Perhaps the most intense rivalry of them all was between the Chicago Bulls and the New York Knicks in the first half of the decade. It took Michael Jordan's first retirement to get the Knicks over the hump, but there was no shortage of crazy storylines, from Michael Smith's multiple missed layups to Scottie Pippen not checking into the game for a last-second shot that Tony Kukoc ended up hitting anyway.
This is how we do it. This is how we do it. La, 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 la.
Oh my.
What really should elevate the 90s in most people's eyes is the one team that dominated the competition for almost the whole decade,
my
the
God.
Chicago Bulls. The strange thing about Sam Smith criticizing the 90s as weak was that he was a Bulls beat writer for the Chicago Tribune during this time, even writing a best-selling book on the team. Say what you will about the isolations and lack of ball movement, the Bulls were the one team running the triangle offense, which proved to be a ballet amongst all the plotting and physical styles run across the league. While they had the ultimate isolation player of all time in Michael Jordan, they recognized that utilizing ball and player movement opened up better shots for him and his teammates, and also unlocked the key to beating the teams that relied so much on punishing you with their physical defense. You may want to argue that with all their talent, the Bulls would have won anyway. But once you get past the top 3 or 4 players, the roster was filled with role players that other teams didn't want. It was teamwork that unlocked the offense, allowing Jordan to use his individual brilliance to make his teammates better, and the often overlooked value that the triangle always put them in good position to get back on defense.
Steve, hold up. Because that crossover was a little nasty.
An overlooked value that the triangle always put them in good position to get back on defense as well. The 95-96 season was particularly dominant as they broke the record for wins with 72. Of course, we can point to the expansion of 2 teams that same year as one reason, as it watered down the league a little bit. And while the Bulls did feast on the new teams, one of their 10 losses actually came against the new Toronto Raptors after having 2 weekend nights free to roam around the city.
Okay, Gary. Sean. God dang.
Most of the head coaches today were directly influenced by the 90s. And if you look around the league now, you'll see plenty of triangle action. Its influence is still alive and well in the pace and space 3-happy NBA we have today. Factor in the overwhelming amount of talent that graced the hardwood during this decade, and it's clear to see this time frame deserves a lot more respect than it's getting. So next time someone tries to argue that it was a weak decade, stand up, get in their face, and let them know how wrong they are.
I came to get down, I came to get down. So get out your seat and jump around.
Oh my
jump
God,
around.
bro.
Jump around.
Did he just headbutt a referee?
Jump around. Jump around. Jump around. Jump around.
Oh my God.
Jump up and get down.
Sports fans, make sure to hit the
Y'all was wild in the 90s, bro. Y'all was wild in the 90s. Y'all was wild. But yeah. Just watching this video, the 90s are definitely a disrespected time because that it was a lot of crazy players in the NBA during that time, like crazy amazing. That's all we got for this. If you guys got a favorite video suggestion, you can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell, get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. I got social media, Patreon, all up top. You can subscribe to any of it. Put all the links in the description. All you got to do is hit the link, follow me, talk to me. Love talking to you guys. You guys are the most incredible team on YouTube. It's your boy Neal. Out.